volunteers with the Gilroy Historical Society, and I am delighted to see so many people. It's wonderful. We wanted to have this very special program to thank the many donors to our endowment fund, which we just successfully made a match. We have a I don't want to call him a sugar daddy, and we have a wonderful donor named Warren Lindeleaf, who issued a challenge to us. If we could raise $10,000 last year, he would match it, and we did. So anyway, we're establishing the endowment fund to eventually be able to hire a director for the Gilroy Museum, and because we're running it with volunteers now, and you know what running something with a committee is like. You have to be very flexible. But we are also very thankful because we've had great attendance and great response from the community, both in visitors and in donations to our endowment fund. So we're underway, and we wanted to have this really special program to thank all of our supporters. And so I'd just like to say welcome and introduce Carol Peters, who has done the whole program.
No, without your help, it wouldn't have been possible. Thank you very much. Well, thank you very much for coming. This is a very, very special day for me. I knew my dad was an artist at night because he was a welder during the day. And you know, when you're with your parents, you just take it for granted. He'd come home, he'd get a manila envelope with a sheet of silver in it, sterling silver, and people would come over, and he was a welder, but he made bits and brands, and he made a lot of things. He could just pretty much do anything. And so he'd make bits, and then he would hand engrave the silver that went on, adhered to them. And he passed away in 1977, and I had some of his stuff, but it was scattered around. I really didn't know where it was. So out of the blue, I get an email. He was born on Easter Sunday, and he was born on April 7th, and I get an email on April 4th of last year. And it said, I'm looking for Carol Tomey, Curley Tomey's daughter, and actually Tom Squarey, who's here today, where are you, Tom? Way back there, wrote the email, and it was just all of a sudden I thought, what is this? And I kept on reading it, and he said that he had been to a funeral in McKay, Idaho, and they'd talked about my dad at the funeral. And I thought, what in the heck are they talking about my dad 34 years after he died? You know, just crazy. And he said the host was the rancher Dave Nelson had passed away. And Dave Nelson had managed the Hewlett-Packard Ranch here in Metcalf Road, and then went up to McKay, Idaho, and some people would go up and hunt. And my dad was one of the people that would go hunt. And Dave collected silver, you know, engraved bits and bridles and that kind of thing. And he knew my dad was an engraver. I guess a lot of people knew he was an engraver from the West. And his work was very, very respected and coveted. And, you know, it was, you know, kind of the kind of thing that he was a man you went to if you wanted the big belt buckle after you won the rodeo and that type of thing. So they wanted to know more about my dad, more about his work, more about how he signed it and all this kind of stuff, because when this man passed away, he was a political figure as well, and his funeral was attended by over 600 people. The governor and first lady were there, and when Randy Nelson actually gave the, you know, the eulogy, or he spoke about my dad and had the bit in his hand, and then the bit was placed on Dave's casket along with Dave's cowboy hat. So of course, when I read this, you know, it's right before my dad's birthday 34 years later, and I was just, you know, crying, bawling. So I wrote back and said, yes, it's my dad. And, he said, well, let me forward this to Randy in McKay, Idaho. And so that's how the story began. So the story begins, this is Randy Nelson, and this was the cart or wagon that they carried his dad's casket. And it was followed by horses and people riding to the funeral. And he's from McKay, Idaho, and he actually drove with his uncle out to meet me. I felt like Picasso's daughter, It's like they came and looked at everything I had, which wasn't very much, and it's in the cases in the back, but it was very exciting. And this is the last bridal bit my dad made. It was not finished. He came back home, and he was working on it for Dave and passed away. And somebody must have sent it to Dave after, my dad passed, knowing it's probably Pete Moretti. My dad he loved to hunt, never really got out of the state very often, but when he did, it was a big treat. So he had a guitar, he played music by ear, everybody loved to hear him sing. He cut a record when he was young, and he went up there, and Pete Moretti told him, well, if you come up there, you're gonna have to wear some better clothes. And he goes, I'm gonna check your suitcase. So, because my dad always just had like an old work shirt and work pants, and he wasn't a very fancy guy, didn't, dress up a lot. So when they got there, I guess he had a new pair of pants, but his shirt had kind of like turned a little yellow around the collar. But Dave fell in love with him, and they were friends the whole time. He just, got along really well. So this is my dad. He was a fun-loving cowboy. He loved everything cowboy, even though I'm full-blooded Italian. He was Italian. His parents came from Italy. It's Tomei, but they misspelled it in Ellis Island. So we are the only ones with a Y at the end. But my mom was Eleanor Speciali, and some of the pieces that you see in the case have ES on them, and he made those for her when they were dating. And so you can see them together. They're up in the corner, and then my dad is in the bottom, and he has a circle around his head, and that's him with a hat. It's hard to see, I know. The AT was his brand. He made brands up and down Santa Clara County for lots of ranchers. Lots of people have them and use them today. So my mother, Eleanor, was born in San Jose, and she, some of my relatives from San Jose are here as well today. She was very quiet. My dad was the other side of the coin. He was a singer. He had all the people coming around. My mom loved books. She was very, she graduated when she was 15. She was very, very smart. Got a scholarship at that point. But being Italian, they thought, no, you don't go to college. Your husband will take care of you. So she instilled in me the respect for, just learning. And I really admire that and about her a lot. She was soft-spoken and just supported him. So they were like the yin and the yang, The next one, he loved horses. He used to ride a lot. He'd go back in the woods and pack his deer out. He was really super strong. He was stocky and short, but very, very strong, had huge forearms, big hands. And I used to think he got the forearms from just bending the steel, but I think he was born like that. So one of the stories, there's so many stories. When I started doing this, my God, everybody had a story. I could stand up here and tell stories all day, and you probably have some to share as well. And I swear, I think it was because people loved him so much that this has been an easy journey for me. Like Tom Square just came forward and helped me with things. People would just help me with things because that's the way he was. He never wanted anything back, he just gave. And so they used to go to Salinas. There was some bar in Salinas that had a slot machine, and slot machines are really super heavy. And they'd walk in, and my dad wasn't very tall, so but he was strong. So they'd say, okay, we bet that this man could bench press this slot machine. And everybody go, oh, no way. So he could, got down there, and of course he could do it. So he got a lot of the money, and then they'd buy drinks all night or whatever. just a lot of stories. So he did pack some of those deer out, but a lot of times used a horse. He sang, he played the guitar, he played the violin, he just by ear. And when he got a piano, I was over there hating life because I couldn't stand those piano lessons, and he'd sit down and, give me a break. Jimmy has picked up the same talent. He plays guitar by ear. He makes songs, music. So it's too bad that, you know, he passed and my mom passed so early not to see my children and see that that legacy has gone through, you know, the family. I painted this picture from the black and white, and Jimmy laughs at it because the eyes look like he's blind. It's in the back. I could not paint him. I know there's a shadow there, and I always tell my students, only paint what you can see, but I swear my dad had the most sparkling blue eyes, and if I'd left those out, it just wouldn't have been the same. So I left them in, and I just put them there. So, you know, that's what I remember. My cousin Bob right here has a blue eyes from the family. My grandmother and grandfather had blue eyes, and all that family had blue eyes. They're from the north. So I didn't get lucky, but we're jealous of Bob because he got the blue eyes. Jimmy has them too, and also my little grandson. The bits, you'll see a few of them, and they're not the best ones. He had lots and lots of beautiful bits, and he engraved for people at night, and then they're out there somewhere being used. There's tons of stuff. He was very prolific. I could not believe he could do that much in the time he lived, because he died when he was fairly young. And, you know, he had a regular work day as well, so. But he just, it was in him. He could do it. It was just like he carved things. He would pick up a piece of wood and carve an animal out of it. You'll see his tools. He's etched things in them. He just did it. It's just like if it's in you, you don't have any choice. It just comes out of you. If you're a musician, like I have Guy and Alicia here today, if it's in you, it just comes out, and you don't think about it. It's just there. So it was fascinating for me when I was a little kid to see him actually do them. And Dave Nelson in McKay, Idaho, they thought he invented the spade or snaffle bit. And if you look at some of the bits in the back, some of them have like a spade point where the mouthpiece goes into the horse's mouth, and some of them are rounded. And I knew he was talking about something like that, but of course he didn't document it, and he didn't sign a lot of his work. So when they drove down from Idaho, they were looking for signatures, they were looking for identifying marks that would make that my dad's work. So it's getting to be a collectible thing, which is, I can't, you know, it's hard for me to comprehend after all these years, and it just fills me with so much pride. And these are examples of the sides of the bits. I think one of the things I'm really impressed with being an artist is that all these were done with tools that he actually made. And one of the things I think if you are a collector would be that on all the edges he did these little nicks. He did like little tiny edging all the way around. If you look at the lighters, if you look at all the bits and browns, he just etched around and kind of like made a little border. So to me that would be a signature. And then in the one on the right is kind of like big gouges in the sides of the design, kind of almost like you would do a drop shadow if you were painting, so that the image comes forward and you get a whole lot of depth, which is really sophisticated because it's like deep and high and lower and just, you know, when you have that kind of a lost and found line in a pencil, it makes it way, way more sophisticated. So he just had this wonderful knowledge without being taught. You'll see the bits, these are the ones I have, they're kind of rusty, and all the different kinds of mouthpieces are a little bit different according to what they were used for. He made a lot of brands. I photographed these, Roxanne Gardner Felice. I went to La Quinta and they're on her wall. And people have brought their bits to brands today, and they're out on the table so you could see them. Branding is outlawed in Santa Clara County. I just found out because we shot a branding for the documentary. In San Benito County, it's still there. So my thinking is that the cowboy life is slowly going away. It's not going to be what it was, you know. So to lose that would be really, really sad. So one of the things I felt really good about doing is discovering it now so that I had a chance to document it and actually have it preserved. The lighters are fabulous. The little bracelet on the side is in that little case. He did that for me. He did a couple of them for me. But the lighters, incredible. Another story, he, would go out and drink at the bars. He made homemade wine. They just, crazy guys. And those were Zippo lighters, and people would take their lighter out of their pocket. And my dad had a pocket knife with a tweaked blade, and he would actually just carve the lighter at the bar and give it back to the person. Maybe not that intricate, but that's the story. And I believe it, because he was quick. I saw him do so many things that were just amazing. The lighting, the engraving process, and I'm sorry you can't see this closer, I do have a poster. He started with just a line, just like you would draw a sketch, not very deep. And then as he worked the metal, he would get different tools for different kind of gouges and crevices. And then the edging was always done with a little nicks. And even the tops, all the sides, everything was done so detailed. And when you see those lighters, they're so small in there. That's why it's nice to have the pictures. And I blew them up so that you can see them. But it's beautiful work. You can see what I'm talking about with the little edging around the sides. To me, that's a signature. And you also use a lot of floral motif. And the fact of a drop shadow effect, I think that's kind of a signature too. Very few things were signed. I went through, my mom's bracelet was signed, but not much. They said that Dave's bit was signed as well. These are rings, knives. He would do the sterling and adhere it to a knife. Gun stocks, he was always with hunters. They'd want a personalized gun stock. He'd do the carving, the silver, and somehow screw it into the gun stock. So they'd have silver gun stocks. Beautiful things. I mean, just beautiful. The rodeo, all the championship rodeo riders, he was like an unfound little gem. They'd come from up and down the state of California, Idaho, all over to get his work. He'd get stuff in the mail, I want this, I want my initials on it. Usually a gold initial, a gold horse head or something like that would be in the middle, and they'd tell him what he wanted, and he'd go back and draw it. Sometimes they'd come and pick it up. They'd come in, have a glass of wine, he'd sing some songs, they'd pick up the work. So it was pretty kind of a social, social occasion. But this is some examples. He made my mother the earrings, and they have little screwbacks. They're in there, the little screwback earrings. Made her a lot of pins. And I'm so glad I still have it. Rings, necklaces. I wear some of it. Kathy Frazzetti's here today. Where are you, Kathy? She's over here. And that's her belt buckle, and she brought it, and her belt is in the case. And we were friends from the time before we were born, because her parents and my parents were friends, and then we were born. So there's a picture of us on a cow in the case as well. That's her and I now. Anyway, and her sister Roxy, good friends forever and ever. And there's Carol Ann, used to be Carol Ann Fabing. They had the Hayes Ranch up, I guess it's in Gilroy, Morgan Hill, San Martin area. And he did this belt buckle, which is she emailed me this. It's very unusual because it's curved on the sides, and it's got a more of a modern look to it. Again, the signature gold and horse head, and then the Carol Ann Fabing. She's Carol Jones now. Terry and Russell Wolf, the Kickham Ranch, that's been around forever. The brand back there is theirs. Russell didn't want to lend it to me because they use it, and he said he didn't want to not have it to brand this spring. They've been using it to this day. And they also did a logo for an apron and a hat. And some of the pictures you'll see around are from their ranch. Beautiful ranch up off of Holesclaw Road. The ring, my dad was sitting talking to Tom Squarey's dad somewhere. And my dad had this ring on, the one in the picture. And Tom's dad said he liked the ring. So my dad said, you can have it. That's how he was, and that's how all of you have helped me now, some of you not even knowing me, which, that's just how it comes down. These are my children, Jimmy. And Nicole. I found this when I was going through all the boxes. And that's my mom, and that's me. I was, one of those places where you put the thing on. My brother is pictured up on the wall. I was having computer problems and trying to get this book, it's in a book, all these PowerPoint slides, and it wouldn't work. I kept unplugging it. Those of you that know me from leadership know my computer they're not, I'm doing it, but it's fighting me. So anyway, I just sent it out. So if I do another one, I'll put my brother in it. But at this point, I was just happy to get it out of there. And there's a lot of typos as well, And then my dad was featured in the book, Images of America, Gilroy, as a last blacksmith, because he did start out working in a blacksmith shop and just went from there. And he talked in the dispatch about his life and about stocking the fish in the streams. This is from BG, the one down below, and I have circled his. He looks very, very young. He worked there until it closed, and then he opened his own shop. And that's him, and Jimmy put him on the background of a lighter, because, well, now he's called James, but Jimmy, my son, is an art director in San Francisco, so he did that quick. He just took, how you do it on Photoshop. And then the poem is over there, and I'm going to have him finish with the last poem, and it's not as long. And I just really, really appreciate your attention, and I really thank the Historical Society for letting me honor my father and helping me do that. So, James?
Jimmy's fine.
Okay.
Howdy. You might have heard of Curley. He had a lot of friends, from councilmen to cowboys. The list just never ends. He had a lot of talent, could carve and weld and sing. Folks came to him with poems, because he could do most anything. You fellas need a buckle, engraved, bride, or bit. Your horse needs a shoeing. He'll make you one that fit. He always had a twinkle in his eyes of blue. He'd feed you while you waited and have a glass of wine, maybe two. Sometimes he held his guitar and he would sing to you a story song. Times he'd just make one up, and sometimes we'd just sing along. It always seemed so easy. The silvery engraved, the metal twinkled like diamonds. The designs made people rave. Rodeo champs at the top all had a belt buckle made by Curley. They rode the long trail to his shop, stayed, watched, and never left early. The champions came from all over. He had orders stacked, work galore. He made each unique and personal. Silver met gold, met art. Who could ask for more? He knew just how to make things work. He had the natural gift. He put himself into his work, even though he worked all day at a welding shift. He always seemed so happy. He worked all day and night. His friends, his friendly words, and his beautiful work would bring the darkest day to light. He will always be remembered by his work and love and art. How can you forget a man when he made things from his heart? Thanks.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for coming. Thank you, Gavelin Television, Marilyn, Abad Cardinelli, Joe Cardinelli, Sean Mulcair at the camera back there, and the Gilroy Historical Society. Thank you very, very much. And Chamber of Commerce, Susan Valenta, yes. Thank you very much for, the PowerPoint and coming early and setting up, and Lizeron Restaurant, you're the best. I mean, you guys helped me string those with fish line this morning because they were falling off the wall, and just really helped with everything. So totally from the bottom of my heart, thank you very much for coming. If I forgot to thank anybody, I love everybody here, family and friends of my dad, and God bless all of you. And just take some time now, look around, and the rest of the night is yours.
I can surely appreciate a true cowboy. I'm from Dickinson, North Dakota, so I did a lot of farming, helped out every year with that, and understand what a cowboy's all about. I'll do a little song here for you.